Why do some people spend years trying to get out and then feel strangely lost when they finally do? I know someone who left a very senior role after nearly 20 years. Good exit, plenty of money, lovely farewell. The sort where everyone keeps telling you how jealous they are. No alarm on Monday. You can finally relax. God, what I would give to be you. Sarcastic. He agreed with all of it. Of course he did. What was he going to say? Actually, I'm slightly terrified of Tuesday. A few weeks later, I saw him. I asked, "So, how's freedom?" Curious. He looked at me for a second, then said, "Quiet." That was it. Quiet. I remember thinking, that's a strange answer. Not happy, not bored, not relieved, quiet. And I started noticing what he meant. For 20 years, his phone had been mildly threatening. Someone always wanted something, a decision, an approval, a view, a problem, then suddenly, nothing, which should have been wonderful. Sighs. For about 4 days, I think it was. Then he started checking his phone more. That's the bit I found interesting. Not because he was expecting anyone. Almost the opposite. I think he was checking whether anyone was expecting him. There's a difference. And once I saw it in him, I started seeing versions of it everywhere. A founder sells. A CEO steps down. Someone takes the package they've spent 3 years negotiating. Someone retires early. Everybody congratulates them on getting their life back. Then Monday morning arrives. And their life has absolutely no idea what to do with them. There's no 8:30. No one needs the answer. Nobody is waiting for the deck. Nobody cares whether you're 5 minutes late. You spent years complaining that your calendar owned you. Then your calendar becomes completely available. And somehow that doesn't feel entirely flattering either. That's when I started wondering whether we misunderstand what people lose when they leave, because obviously they lose the job. But perhaps that's not the interesting part. I asked another executive once, "What did you miss most?" I expected, "My team." Maybe, "the challenge." He said, "Being useful." Immediately. No pause. That answer bothered me more, because being useful sounds so innocent. It's practically a virtue. You solve difficult things. People trust you. Your opinion carries weight. You become the person somebody calls when something matters. And the better you become, the more people need you. Nobody warns you about this because everybody approves. They promote you for it. They pay you for it. They praise you for it. You can spend 30 years being rewarded for being needed. And perhaps, without noticing, something very small happens. Being needed starts to feel a lot like being valuable. Then you leave, and you're still valuable. Obviously. Except the world stopped sending quite so many receipts. That fascinated me. Because perhaps some people who say, "I miss the company," don't actually miss the company. They miss walking into a room and knowing why they were there. They miss having an answer people wanted. They miss being the person others turned toward when something went wrong. They miss being extremely good at something that mattered every day. And that is not quite the same thing as wanting the job back, which means there's a dangerous mistake available here. You can interpret, "I miss who I was there," as "I shouldn't have left." Those are completely different problems. And if you confuse them, you can make a very impressive next decision for entirely the wrong reason. This is where successful people become interesting to watch, because they don't usually sit around looking lost for very long. They're far too competent for that. They fix it. New company, board position, investment, advisory role, something with a title. Suddenly the calendar has shape again. The phone rings. People want opinions. Much better. And maybe it genuinely is. Maybe they love the work. Maybe it's exactly what they should be doing. But once I'd noticed the pattern, I couldn't stop asking another question. Why did the next thing need to happen so quickly? I remember one conversation with someone who had barely left his role. He was already talking about 3 opportunities, not casually. He'd made a spreadsheet. Of course he had. I said, "Do you actually want any of them?" He laughed. Then he said, "I don't know." That may have been the most useful answer, because these weren't bad opportunities. They were excellent, prestigious, interesting, well paid, the kind of thing sensible people tell you not to turn down. But perhaps that's exactly why this gets difficult. A genuinely good opportunity, and an opportunity that makes you feel important again, can look identical from the outside, sometimes even from the inside, And suddenly the question isn't, is this a good opportunity? Obviously it is. The question becomes, what part of me is relieved that it appeared? That's harder, because maybe you want the work, or maybe you want the signal. You're still wanted. I think money makes this even stranger, because at a certain level, the spreadsheet may already have answered the financial question. You have enough, more than enough, and yet stopping still feels vaguely irresponsible. Another deal still matters. Another win still feels necessary. Another zero remains oddly persuasive despite changing almost nothing about your actual life. Which made me wonder, if the money has stopped materially changing your life, what is the next win still changing? Your status? Your sense of momentum? Your distance from where you started? The story you tell yourself about who you are? I don't know. That's personal. But I think it's worth knowing. Because enough sounds like a financial number. I'm increasingly convinced it often isn't. You can know exactly how much money you have, and have absolutely no idea how much achievement you require. Those are different calculations. And the second one doesn't appear on a wealth statement. The person who told me his life felt quiet eventually became busy again. Boards, investments, projects. But when I saw him much later, he seemed different. Not transformed, nothing dramatic. He'd simply become much more annoying to schedule, because he said no to things, good things he would once have accepted immediately. I asked him about it. He said, I spent 20 years trying to become someone people wanted time from. I'm not spending the next 20 giving it to everyone who asks. I like that, because I think something had shifted. Before the exit, success meant being valuable enough that everyone wanted a piece of him. Afterwards, success had started to mean deciding who actually got one. That's a very different kind of status. Almost invisible. No title required. And perhaps that's what the quiet period had eventually shown him. He didn't need another identity immediately. He needed enough silence to notice which parts of the old one he actually wanted to keep. That's the distinction I think we miss. Leaving doesn't automatically create an identity crisis, and missing something about the old life doesn't prove you made a mistake. But if your role spent 20 years telling you, you're relevant, you're useful, you're respected, you're winning, you're needed, then perhaps you shouldn't be surprised when its absence tells you something too. The useful question may not be, do I miss it? That's too broad. Maybe it's, what exactly do I miss? The work? The people? The intellectual difficulty? The pace? The influence? The recognition? Being needed? Or simply knowing every morning exactly who I was? Those answers lead to very different next moves. And then there's the question underneath all of them, the one nobody else can answer for you. If I don't need another title, another zero, or another room turning toward me, what do I actually want the rest of my ambition to do? I don't think that's a question to answer quickly. In fact, quickly may be the problem. Because if you're very good at succeeding, you can build the next impressive life before you've noticed why you needed it. And from the outside, it may look exactly like another brilliant move.